Welcome to the Sunday morning meditation. I'm going to be doing a chant, and when it's time for you to repeat what I'm saying, I'll go like that. And because when we come to the end of the line, we usually hold it longer than you might think. And then I'll bring you back in, so when to come in. Okay. From the point of light within, from the point of light within. Let's do that again. From the point of light within, from the point of light within, within the mind of God, within the mind of God. Let light stream forth into the minds of people. Let light descend on from the point of light within, within the mind of God, let love stream forth into the heart of people. Let love descend on earth. From the center where the will of God is known. Let purpose guide the wills of people. The purpose that the masters know and serve. The purpose that the masters know and serve. From the center which I call
Good morning, everyone. As most of you know, I have been, or was, seriously incapacitated with the COVID virus, which led to pneumonia and some other really terrible, difficult physical challenges. And I wouldn't be here this morning if it weren't for my devoted family, Santisha, Del, Shad, Mike, and one really learned and wise naturopath, Dr. Charlie Cropley. So it has been a challenging journey. In truth, I was at death's door. And it was a long, I don't know, a long, dark period in my life. I never really thought that getting this COVID virus would be so devastating. I considered that, yes, I understood that people suffered greatly when they were struck by it, but I never thought it could simply take your entire physical, mental countenance down to absolute desperation. But it did to me. And so all I can say is I am very fortunate that whatever powers may be that led my family and Dr. Cropley to do the things they did to rescue me. All I can say is I have gratitude. I want to thank all of you, all the people that have been praying for me. And I believe those prayers were answered. I don't think I would have survived if it weren't for a concentrated consciousness of prayer wanting me to return and express in the physical body for whatever time there is still to be expressed in this physical body. But I don't want to go into the details of my COVID experience because they are so filled with insights that might be helpful to everyone, that I have decided, instead of talking this morning about that, that I would invite everyone who's watching now on live stream, if they so wish, they can join me next Sunday after the first service in Fellowship Hall for a round chair discussion in which I'll be able to relate more fully all that has to do with what happened to me, through me, and for me in this COVID experience. That said, I do want to talk about suffering in life in general and how to transcend suffering. You recall that whenever I speak about suffering, I relate that there are two categories. One is real suffering. That is the loss of a family member, a loved friend, a pet, or contracting a chronic illness. That is real suffering. The other is useless, unnecessary suffering, which is about 95% of human suffering, which is the angst, the frustration, the broken relationships, the ongoing worry and concern that accompanies a limited level of consciousness. And so that is mostly what we are involved in. And I suspect that at some point in the evolution of humanity, while we deal so often with useless suffering, at some point in our process, we will not only transcend useless suffering, which is what many people have done already, but we will transcend suffering, period. Because we are made in the image and likeness of the divine. And we simply need to continue to expand our awareness of that truth and to live from it so totally that the slings and arrows of limited life and the things that come in a negative way into our experience will be automatically dispelled by our awareness of our divine essence, which cannot be moved and simply will continue to give a holistic outpicturing of our physical life. Until then, however, we should know, as my very learned and wise Dr. Cropley has brought to my attention very clearly, there is a very close symbiotic relationship between the pathways and laws of the body and the mind. And we have to understand the pathways and laws of the body for them to finally be in alignment with the harmony of a truly conscious awareness. We can be aware to certain degrees, but we have to be aware also that the body has its life and it has its laws. And unless we are in league with, accommodating, serving in a sense, those laws, which I believe was the key to the treatment I received from this amazing doctor. Unless we're in league with them, health as we would like it and want to live it will not be available. So, that said, we are on an amazing journey to enlightenment. And the ups and downs along the way can be looked at as our teachers. So I want to begin by sharing with you this most known parable from the Gospel of Luke. And the master said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the share of property that falls to me. And he gave him his inheritance as requested. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took his journey into a far country. And there he squandered his inheritance in loose living. And when he had spent everything, a great famine arose in that country, and he was destitute. So he went and joined himself to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have fed on the pods that the swine ate, but no one gave him anything. But when he came to his health, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have enough bread and plenty of food to spare, while I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. To begin, we need to look at this from its symbolic perspective, obviously. From the symbolic perspective, the father in the story is God. The prodigal son, and the word prodigal means wasteful. The prodigal son who wants to collect his inheritance and go on his own is everyone living strictly in body-centered consciousness. To go on his own, which is to withdraw from the presence of that higher awareness that we understand to be God, or the Creator, or the creation in its majestic majesty, in its way of bringing life everywhere. And so the son is going to a far country. Actually, you could say the son is going to a distant consciousness, which you might consider to be the five senses, the consciousness of the physical life specifically. So, understanding that, we all, in a sense, start out from that perspective. And we all, in a sense, naturally want to try to make life work from the sensory consciousness. And so we pursue happiness, life, peace, relationships from that idea of self, that interpretation of self. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because we're operating in a limited level of awareness and thinking. It doesn't work because we are somehow separated from the all-knowing or the omnipresent one. That is the intelligence that is life itself ongoing. But we are separated from that as we develop this idea of being able to operate from our separate perspective, our point of view, our limited understanding, our personal collection of beliefs. And when we are moving on in life, at some place we recognize, or at some place the frustration of living from that limited perspective without any relationship to the divine consciousness or spiritual awareness. Living from that perspective brings us such difficulty, such disappointment, such concern and ongoing worry that we are destitute. And that's where we find the son, this prodigal son. In this isolated awareness, we eventually become wanting to transcend it. It's a natural process of life. I don't think that it's something gone wrong with the creation that we wind up living strictly physical lives, but I think it is a process of life where we are given the opportunity to grow in ongoing awareness. Remember, to incarnate is to enter a state of consciousness in which we're capable of reflecting upon our thoughts and our actions. And it's seemingly the best possible way to awaken, because if we're able to reflect on how we've been thinking and the actions we've been taking, we can alter our thinking and alter our actions, and thereby experience more of the harmony, peace, wholeness, and joy that we are seeking. So that's what we are doing here. It is true, I suspect, that many people go a long time before they are willing to take to task their own awareness. But when that time comes, there will be that divine influence, which has always been at the very core of their being, to help them awaken, to live more effectively and beautifully and harmoniously. And I think that's what unity is all about. This universal prodigal son leaves his home for this foreign consciousness and then finds himself in such a desperate situation that it is depicted of him of rising to a place of famine, where this famine is not about physical sustenance. It's about spiritual sustenance. So having gone into the sense consciousness and attempted to make that work, we find ourselves bereft of really feeling good and really being able to operate in harmony with all of those others operating from their seemingly separate points of view. But he is depicted as then having to attach himself to one of the citizens of that far consciousness and feed swine. And he would gladly have fed on the pods that the swine ate. That's how desperate this prodigal son becomes. So, in that desperation as being related by this Bible writer, it is trying to inform us that there is a place in our limited experience in body consciousness where we will have to, I don't like to use this word, we will have to repent. And let me share this with you, because in my entire spiritual life experience, the one most powerful element for transformation is humility. This is what it's attempting to depict, that this wayward son of God attempts to go and live life from its own point of view, perspective, understanding, and then comes to fail at that really desperately, and then is broken inside with the idea that that's even possible. Then it repents or can return. And this is how the scripture relates that particular return. Can we have this PowerPoint, please? This is in Luke 15, verses 14 to 20. And when he had spent everything, a great famine arose in that country, and he was destitute. So he went and joined himself to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have fed on the pods that the swine ate, but no one gave him anything. You will know as well that for a Jew, any relationship with pigs is not to be had. And the worst thing that can happen to a Jew is to fall to such a limited level as to have to tend to swine. And that's the attempt of the writer here to relate how far one can fall to such a place of godless awareness that he is mingling with the swine. But when he, the prodigal son, came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and food to spare, while I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father." In this, you can clearly see the element of humility. And this whole concept of, I have attempted to live out my own personal life and make it work accordingly. But I have discovered that without spiritual consciousness, without an awareness of the divine that gives me life and breath and insight, it gives me life and breath and insight. Without that on a daily basis, I am bound to fail and fail miserably. So there's the humility, the return to the Father consciousness, the way it is depicted here. And the story goes on that the father then provides him with shoes for his feet, a wardrobe of clothing, and a ring to put on his finger. And then the father throws a huge banquet to celebrate the return of his son. In actuality, the return to the divine level of awareness, the return to the practice of the presence of God, results in the benefit of an opening mind that recognizes that everyone who lives, every created one, is part of this intelligence and love that we refer to as God. And in recognizing that, this very limited perspective we have lived in, which has held us in separation, in selfishness, in concern and worry and broken relationships, this diminishes. And there is such a freedom of spirit, of heart, that you know what it means that the kingdom of God is in the midst of you and all around you and available to you. But I want to relate this from a Course in Miracles perspective as well. Can we have the PowerPoint of the Course in Miracles? You can read this in the Course in Miracles text, page 213, paragraph 3, in the new edition, page 229. What is one cannot be perceived as separate, and the denial of the separation is the restatement of knowledge. At the altar of God, the holy perception of God's Son becomes so enlightened that light streams into it, and the Spirit of God's Son shines in the mind of the Father and becomes one with it. Very gently does God shine upon himself, loving the extension of himself that is his Son. The world has no purpose as it blends into the purpose of God, for the real world has slipped quietly into heaven. That, if you haven't been familiar with A Course in Miracles, that can sound very heady, but in a sense, as you understand such spiritual truths, they are so heart-opening. But I have a way of sharing it with you that is so much closer to where we actually operate in awareness. I want to share this with you from the biography of Edgar Cayce, an extraordinary human being, and from my point of view, possibly the second most divinely expressing person that has ever walked the earth is Edgar Cayce. At a very early age, he was moving toward wanting to understand what life really is all about. And of course, living with a Christian family, devoted fundamental Christians, he was brought into reading the Bible and attempting to understand the Bible. At an early age, he readily admits he didn't understand very much of it, as most of us do. But he continued to read the Bible, and eventually he read the Bible once through every year of his life. But at the age of 15, he was involved in this church, which he served totally, believing what those scriptures were saying about allowing your life to become a God-centered life. This is what he says in his readings. So by allowing his life to become a God-centered life at an early age, at the age of 15, he had this to say, and I think it explains the entire scenario, the entire theme of what I am talking about this morning. Can we have this PowerPoint? This is from the Memoirs of Edgar Cayce, page 14, paragraph 2. I prayed very earnestly that afternoon as I sat in the woods by my favorite tree that had so often seemed to speak to me, answering many of my childish questions, as the birds and little animals of the section would gather about me. Even in time, I seemed to hear the answer that God was just as near and personal as we would allow him to be, speaking to us through his creatures. It appeared to me even then, if God had made the little birds, the trees, the flowers, the beautiful sky, and set the stars in their places, given to the sun and moon those laws governing them, so they might shed their glory for the benefit of all he made. He must be in every one of these little creatures in some manner or form. As I gradually saw their fear subside because of something I was able to say or do to them, was not this affection, this companionship, something akin to what would, if properly understood, show his presence in relations between individuals? This is at 15 years old, he recognizes the calling to a magnificent level of being that can be for all individuals. He used to, when he used to go alone into the woods to pray, rabbits and all kinds of animals would come around him. And we know this story as well from the knowledge of St. Francis, who had the same thing occur. Just creatures would carry out their lives around him because he became one who held no fear or consternation or limited idea of life. He was one with life and open to live, and he then did live a life, an extraordinary life that has healed, multi-thousands, not just in his time, but even after that in his organization. So there is life, and it is truly a school because we are able to reflect. And we have within us, at the core of our being, that light and love that gives us breath and life to live and learn and grow and live effectively, beautifully, harmoniously, through this expanded awareness of the presence of God in every person, in every place, in every condition. It is with that I want to share this meditation with you. Can we skip? Yeah, all right. Just become still a moment. Take a couple of deep breaths. I'm going to share a guided meditation with you. And then at some point, I'm just going to let you reflect on what has been said. Just breathe. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Every person, however mistaken in thought, is seeking to know the kindness and peace of our Creator, whose presence can be expressed through me in every here and now moment. Through this consideration I have for all people and creatures, through this consideration I embrace for all people and creatures I meet upon my path. I open the universal heart of God, letting light and love restore the purpose and harmony of life. This is true. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Every person, however mistaken in thought, is seeking to know the kindness and peace of our Creator, whose presence can be expressed through me in every here and now moment. Through this consideration I have for all the people and creatures I meet upon my path, I open the universal heart of God, letting light and love restore the purpose and harmony of life. This is true. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Every person, however mistaken in thought, is seeking to know the kindness and peace of our Creator, whose presence can be expressed through me in every here and now moment. Through this consideration I have for all the people and creatures I meet upon my path, I open the universal heart of God, letting light and love restore the purpose and harmony of life. This is true. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Bring the music up, Josh. Don't fade it. Bring it up. A little louder. as we go forth from this meditation to those places we occupy in time and space. Let us go forth with a greater determination to be awake in our lives, awake to each amazing moment, to be awake that we are one with this grand and amazing intelligence we recognize to be the Creator. And for this opportunity in every moment to share in this awareness, we give thanks. And to this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now. So as we're preparing to do this, we will be passing baskets around. And those of you that are watching on live stream, you have the opportunity to, I guess, scroll down to where it says donate. It will give you several ways you can donate to Unity of Boulder. Here's some of the ways that you can do that. And for those of you that would prepare to use your credit card, we have a dip jar, credit card dip jar in the lobby. So as we take our offerings in our hands, let's bless them with this offering awareness. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give.
Just to know you, just to live inside your grace, just to feel you. In my heart, at this time, in this place, there is peace in every breath, as my mind dwells on your name, finding peace within, treasure of bliss, never
I want to thank all of you for showing up. And I invite all of you to join me next week after the first service. I mean, you can come to the first service, of course, but after that service next week, I will have a round circle, chair circle, to share with you this incredible journey through COVID that I have been so blessed to come out of and be on the other side of now. And my blessings and love to all of those who are instrumental in bringing me back for whatever I'm still supposed to do. God bless you all, because you are all servants of God. So be it.